Go ahead and introduce your bill, or I'm sorry, I'll move House File 717 to be recommended to Ways and Means.
Mr. Chair, that's a correct motion. Thank you. And there is a amendment in your packet. If you would be so kind, it's an author's amendment to put the bill in the shape I wish it to be before you.
All those in favor of the author's amendment?
And Mr. Chair, I think it's coded A190158.
That's what we're trying to find out for sure here. A19-158 is the amendment. Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Representative Zerwas.
thank you, Mr. Chair. It looks like this is a DE amendment that rewrites the bill, so I'm wondering if we can just kind of cover it briefly before we vote on it.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, members, the DE amendment does no substantive change to the purpose and intent of the bill. It basically makes some changes in terms of individuals that we're naming. It removes the governor as a member of the Cannabis Task Force. It adds 3 categories of members to the task force: the defense attorney, a person previously incarcerated in a correctional facility, and a medical doctor appointed by the Board of Medical Practice. Makes it clear that the Commissioner of Health or his designee is convening the first meeting instead of the governor. And then it adds it actually does add a couple of substantive pieces, so thank you. They're not major, but that the comprehensive plan and report that the task force will bring back will also vet federal law policy about the regulation of cannabis, and would also consider and deliberate over the pardoning of nonviolent marijuana convictions. And then we changed the effective date to have it following enactment, because we discovered, otherwise it's August, and then we only have a few months to do a big task. And it increases the appropriation from $50,000 to $100,000 appropriated to the Commissioner of Health. And members, all of those recommendations, and I'll talk a little bit about this, come as a result of engaging a broad group of legislators, stakeholders, and also the governor's office. And so the spirit of this task force bill has been to reach out broadly to engage with a diverse group of stakeholders, because the whole posture is this is not a partisan issue. It's not an executive legislative issue. It's just a needed conversation that we have. So the author's intent is to be as inclusive as possible with the bill.
So Representative Zerwas, any questions then to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the bill author. I appreciate that walkthrough. I know I've watched the bill be presented in a few committees now, and I know this has been evolving.
Yes, it has.
And you've been very diligent in taking remarks and concerns from other members, as this bill, I think, is improved with each stop. And so I don't have a problem with adopting the author's amendment, but then I do have some questions following that.
Okay, questions to the amendment? Mr. Quam, or Representative Quam?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I'm trying to understand if this came from discussions in the previous committee, and if there's any relations to the debate. In other words, it was in the previous committee, and it was covering certain areas. Does this tie back into? Yeah, I don't know if the bill should go back. You do a DE, and then do you need to go back? And if the areas are relational, and the health committee should see it again, I'm just trying to become more informed on that vein of the
I
topic.
understand your question as you're looking at me, but I'm being asked a question above my pay grade.
No, it's to the author.
Author,
Mr. Chair,
Representative
members,
Mariani.
thank you, Representative Quam. This came over from Health and Human Service policy, obviously through Ways and Means. And then in that committee, I stated what I stated here, which is that we are constantly shaping for the sake of making sure that there is a truly inclusive participation. So we were very transparent with that committee that some of the recommendations that they were suggesting as they vetted the bill, as they listened to testifiers, that we would then be amending in this committee. So from here, the bill, my expectation is once it goes back to Ways and Means, it'll go back to, or it'll go to Health and Human Service Finance, and so you've got some overlap with those members there. My expectation is for the bill also to come to Public Safety and Criminal Justice Reform. So anyway, all that by way of saying that, to your question, sir, that we've been very upfront that this bill will consistently evolve as we're hearing from members in the committee that it's in front of.
Thank you.
Representative Kwong? Okay. With that, we can vote the amendment unless somebody else has other questions for the amendment itself. Not all those in favor of adding the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, then Representative Mariana, the amendment as, or the bill as amended?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I will be very brief, and then there are some testifiers that wish to speak, and then perhaps we can get into the more technical, because I actually am looking for advice from this committee because of the expertise and scope that this committee has. You all know that there are great winds that are blowing across the nation relative to the full legalization of cannabis. Quite frankly, this bill doesn't do that. What this bill does is say that we don't want to just simply get caught up in the wind, that we want to be intentional, we want to be smart, we want to be informed as much as possible about the implications of a full legalization pathway, what has transpired in other jurisdictions. I don't have my full notes, but I think we're at around 10 states now that have a full legalization framework. And of course, you all know that our neighbor to the north, so our border, international border with Canada, just recently moved to a full legalization, so recreational for adults, legal framework for cannabis in the country. The reason I say that is not just a metaphor of winds blowing, it's that Minnesota, along with many other states, are existing within a large context where there's a lot of pressure, either to move in the same direction, or if we don't move in the same direction, to respond to the changed environment that legalization is causing across the country. There are responsible ways for us to respond to that. It's this author's opinion that simply quickly responding is not a responsible approach. And so, therefore, what this bill does is that it creates a task force, a process by which Minnesotans can take some time to dig into what would be the necessary statutory issues and frameworks that we would address if there was a legalization decision, a full legalization decision on the part of the legislature and the governor in the coming year or years, and also to really understand what the most salient issues, even beyond statutory changes, that we should be informed about if we move in that direction. And then finally, to engage in a much more inclusive, steady conversation with the general public, not insinuating that we don't do that here at the legislature, but as legislators, you know that we're moving really fast. It's just the nature of our cycle. And as a result of that, over the years, we've pulled out a few issues and have said, let's slow down a bit and let's have a more deliberate, careful vetting process that would then come back to our process here as well. So again, as I said, that part of the importance of bringing this bill before this committee is that you all are the ones that are tasked to provide the best advice in terms of how to structure task forces, both in terms of fairness issues, in terms of makeup of such a task force, but also what how to actually technically structure a body like this. And so my hope is that we can have that conversation. But Mr. Chair, there are a few testifiers that wish to come forward to speak
Yeah,
to the
let's
nature
go
of
ahead
the
with the
bill.
testifiers, and then if we can, because otherwise we can chew up today, tomorrow, and a couple of other days probably testifying. So if you can testify in a couple of minutes, that would be very helpful for our schedule. So hopefully 2 minutes will work. I'll give you some sort of an indication if you're going past the 2 minutes.
Mr. Chair, we have someone from the Minnesota County Attorneys Association. And then we also have someone from Minnesotans for Responsible Marijuana Regulation, and then a representative from the ACLU.
Please introduce yourself.
Mr. Chair, my name is Robert Small. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota County Attorneys Association. And one of the things that I could do is take a cue. The County Attorneys Association supports this bill. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Layli Fadahi, and I am a lawyer and have spent over a decade developing and advocating for robust governance and oversight approaches to complex policy issues that have significant health, economic, and social implications, including as an academic researcher at the University of Minnesota Law School, the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, and the Center for Bioethics, where I spent the first half of my career. And now I'm also the campaign manager for Minnesotans for Responsible Marijuana Regulation, or MRMR. We're a statewide, multi-partisan campaign and coalition that supports the legalization and responsible regulation of marijuana for safe adult recreational use in Minnesota. MRMR's steering committee and coalition members include former state senators and representatives from both the Republican and DFL parties, Minnesota business owners, justice reform advocates, indigenous community leaders, civil society organizations like the NAACP, the ACLU, Jewish Community Action, and a growing list of mayors and city council members from across the state. And we urge your support on the bill. As we've been reaching out to diverse communities and organizations and affinity groups and policymakers from all corners of Minnesota, what has been most evident above all is that Minnesotans from all walks of life want to know more, and they want to be more engaged in conversations about what legalization could mean and what legalization could look like in Minnesota, rather than just being bystanders to the less nuanced question of whether or not we should legalize. For many of these Minnesotans, it's a matter of feeling that they don't have enough information or facts. They've seen other states legalize marijuana and generate enormous tax revenues that they've invested into their roads, public programs, infrastructure, schools, but they want to know more about the implications of legalization for public health or public safety. And then still many other Minnesotans feel that given the rapidly changing public opinion in support of legalization, that we should make sure that if it happens in Minnesota, it happens in a way that benefits rather than excludes Minnesota farmers, that keeps our children safe from being advertised or sold cannabis products, and that maintains the safety of our roads and redresses the disproportionate impact that marijuana prohibition has had on people in communities of color. And that's why you see before you some letters of support, some from organizations that you've maybe never seen before step forward and support a bill related to marijuana and legalization. We think Minnesota is ready to talk meaningfully about legalization and the finer points of how it can happen, and we hope that you are ready to give them the forum and the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself. Go ahead with your testimony.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Ben Feist. I'm the Legislative Director for the ACLU of Minnesota. I'm also a steering committee member with Minnesotans for Responsible Marijuana Regulation. The ACLU's primary interest in this area is driven by the issue of racial disparities. Our history of criminalization of marijuana has had a staggeringly disproportionate impact on African Americans and other communities of color, and comes at a tremendous human and financial cost. A 2013 report from the National ACLU found that blacks are almost 8 times more likely than whites to be arrested for marijuana possession in Minnesota, even though data shows that the use rates are very similar. This was the 3rd largest disparity in the nation. This disparity is even more stark in Minneapolis, where our 2014 report found that blacks were 11 times more likely than whites to be arrested for possession. The ACLU ultimately supports the full legalization of marijuana through a system of taxation, licensing, and regulation. However, getting to the right regulation in our state will clearly take a lot of time, work, effort, and input from many stakeholders. Accordingly, we support the framework of this task force as an important step in moving our state forward on the issue of responsible regulation of marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier.
Mr. Chair, that's all we have for,
Okay,
at least in terms of the authors.
sure. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to testify who did not sign up earlier? Okay, I don't see anybody making any moves. So members of the committee, questions for the author? Mr. Zerwas, representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Mariani, your DE today changes the enactment date to the immediacy of upon enactment, so when the bill is signed. That gives you roughly from this springish to the end of the year, as the legislation as it sits looks for a report back to the legislature January 1st next year. This is a big undertaking, I think, with as the list of stakeholders kind of grows and the size of the group grows that would comprise of the task force. I think taking meaningful input from that group and compiling a report in that accelerated of a schedule seems ambitious and perhaps challenging. And so I'm wondering how the author would feel about looking at a report date instead of January 1st of 2020 to make that a July 1st, 2020, or a January 1st, 2021. I just want to make sure that there's adequate time for this large group of stakeholders to meet, to take kind of the multitude of things that you're asking for them to consider and report back to the legislature and put together a meaningful report that has input from this significant group. I don't oppose this bill. I appreciate what you're doing in your work on the bill. I've been on task forces with healthcare workforce, with elder abuse, with we had a task force that met over the interim, having to do with granny cams and looking at using cameras in nursing homes to kind of prevent or discover elder abuse. And the one thing that is common in all of my experiences in being appointed to and serving on these task forces is that the actual compilation of a meaningful report and getting that work back to the legislature is significantly more involved than you usually give credit to up front. And I have certainly not served on a task force with a membership as wide ranging and large as the task force that you're proposing. And so I'm just wondering what your thought is on perhaps re-examining the timing and the expectation for a deliverable.
Well, Mr. Chair, members, and thank you for the question, Representative Serwas. You arrive at the balancing act that this bill attempts to do and that I've tried to provide some leadership for. By the way, just very quickly, my intent is to change the reporting end date to February. It buys me another month. But you know, we're not going to start the legislative session until sometime in February. Not that I have a crystal ball, but typically we have not begun the off year any earlier than February. I think last year we even pushed right up to March, if I remember. And so, you know, being able to pull something together during the holidays season just didn't seem right, frankly, to my wife, but I suspect to many other members' spouses as well. Let me just say that, as I said, there is a balancing interest here, and quite frankly, the balancing interest is really about, there is a strong movement and push. And so I use that metaphor of winds that are blowing. Those are national and international in scope. And again, regardless of whether we act or not, all of that is changing the context all around Minnesota rapidly, whether you're engaged in law enforcement or you're part of, you know, monitoring, our transportation, our commerce flows. And so there certainly is a strong desire, certainly for those who want to move toward legalization immediately, but even those who are hesitant about that, but nonetheless are responding to dynamics around us for rigorous and yet urgent, vetting. And so it's, and yet you still have to have vetting. And so that's the balancing, piece here. Let me just say that I think under perhaps other circumstances, I would be more warm to your recommendation. Certainly I've been involved in those kind of vettings in the past that have taken us out a couple of years. The goal that I am proposing is that this political environment own this issue. And by coming back, after we're done with the regular legislative session next year, it really removes this political community out of any kind of decision-making until the next legislature is convened. And there's nothing, however, that says that in February, we have a report. Perhaps the task force itself says, you know what, we need more time. Or the body says, great work, we need more time. There's nothing that says that you couldn't extend this out, or create some auxiliary ongoing, process. I'm hesitant to say that because, part of being able to bring together a broad group of stakeholders here is with that promise of maintaining this balance. And there are lots of folks, quite frankly, that if we're sending messages that all we're going to keep doing is kicking the can down the road, then that really breaks apart, the kind of broad consensus that you have right now, which then ultimately compromises the quality of the decision making. So there is a delicate balancing process that's at play here.
Representative Tice?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Mariani. I just want to echo Representative Zerwas' concerns. I have the same. It's a lot of folks. 27 is what I'm counting, and I could be off. But meeting monthly is quite a task, I think, just in itself. But I am very pleased to see that you're addressing federal law, policy, and regulation, because that is a huge concern for me when we look at legalization, that we're going to go through all this work and then the federal government's going to decide something different. And I'm not hearing a whole lot, we're not getting a lot of data because right now it is a Schedule 1, so there isn't a lot of research data and such that can go on. And I think that's an important part of us getting informed about what this all means for the state of Minnesota. I do appreciate, but I do have concerns about the number of folks you have and meeting once a month. That just sounds like herding a bunch of cats, and that's quite difficult to do.
Mr. Chair and Representative Tice, it is difficult to do. I think there is a strong will, however, that's been expressed by the folks that have come forward or have been recommended, not individuals, but the types of, whether it's an organization or whether it's the County Attorneys Association or the Minnesota Police Officers, the MMR group that we heard from before, where I have certainly picked up a strong desire not to just come in a room and bash each other, but to actually really work through as diligently as possible. So all I can offer is that I think there is a spirit of really rolling up the sleeves and working as difficult or as rigorous as possible. The federal policy review actually came as a result of the governor weighing in and saying, we have to look at those issues. Absolutely, otherwise we're putting our heads in the sand on this.
Follow up at all? Representative Tice?
I'm good.
Representative Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chair Mariani, for bringing this proposal forward. And, regarding the membership, I just want to say thank you for being inclusive and, having the different voices who may be interested in this particular subject area. And, for me, it's really important for us to have the folks who, have been punished, who were incarcerated for, maybe having possession before. And so I think that that's really great. And one of the testifiers before had, talked about, how could we look at folks who, through a racial justice lens, folks who have been in the correction system before who, where, this task may, move Minnesota forward in legalizing it. And so I think that's really great. And also, right now for the folks who are using through our medical cannabis program, I think that it's great and it's definitely needed for us to hear them. And then also having a medical doctor, I think that will assure many of my constituents who have brought forth, some of the concerns regarding some of the health impact of cannabis. And so Representative Mariani, Chair Mariani, I just want to say thank you for being inclusive and having these diverse perspectives as we move forward with this subject area.
Representative Mason?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Mariani. Thank you for taking on this challenge. It does seem that the number of supporters is growing, and my impression is that they're an extremely aggressive group. So the fact that you have the shorter timelines, I appreciate. But I also know that there are people that are, how would I put it, cautious about going forward. So I wish you well, and thank you again.
Is there anyone else with comment or question from the committee?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just want to add quickly within the spirit of transparency that in my response to Representative Quam's earlier question, that some of the recommendations that had been coming in didn't make it into the DE amendment. And so I just want everyone to know that what we're looking at right now are a couple of changes. One is to delete the Commissioner of Labor. Part of what's happening is that some of the criticisms that were offered were that, that by having all these commissioners, we're kind of stacking it, because of the governor's professed broad, position. And so the idea is not to remove, the governor from being able to bring folks in, but to have a little bit of autonomous, distance between him and not just, as opposed to the closeness of his commissioners being there. So we're looking for community, more community type people in those areas that are under some of those state departments. We also are looking to delete the language on 2.8 that talks about a person with experience, enforcement of state's cannabis laws. It doesn't sound as bad as it sounds, because what's happening is there's some redundancy here, because we do have prosecutors and law enforcement very specifically and delineated out or disaggregated out in the list. And then, and that was also about making sure we don't wind up with 100 people, to Representative Tice's point. And then to modify the language on 2.16, previously incarcerated Minnesota Correctional Facility, and to make it really clear that what we're talking about is a person who was convicted of a non-felony drug-related offense. So non-felony drug-related offense, so that we can have that perspective as well. There's some other minor changes. I talked about the change to February. And then we want to add a little bit more language to line 3.20. Right now, it reads state and local regulation. This is under duties. State and local regulation of cannabis growth, processing, transport, packaging, labeling, sale, possession, and use, and then add including government structures. And what we're getting at there is for the group to think through what might be the regulatory commissions that should factor into if there's a movement toward full legalization. So all that by way of full disclosure and transparency of where this is going as we continue to hear advice from members. And I'll close by just saying that my door is open to advice from members of this committee as well.
So I just want to determine, does that constitute your closing remarks, or do you want to?
Sounds good.
Okay. With that, then, I'll renew my motion that House File 717 be forwarded to Ways and Means as amended, that it'll move to Ways and Means. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Aye.
No, the same. It is moved forward. Motion prevails.
Mr. Chair, members, thank you. I look forward to working. If this is successful, I look forward to working with all of you.